every time a new Final Fantasy game launches. As a Final Fantasy fan, I obviously get really excited, but I also can't help but ask myself, who would I recommend this to? My friends who like old school strategic turn-based Final Fantasy? The series, for better or worse, looks nothing like those anymore. My friends who just love getting lost in an epic story? Some of the later Final Fantasies I've felt didn't really deliver on that front. Okay, maybe friends who've never played a Final Fantasy or indeed an RPG before. That is a big gamble for any game. So, usually, when I end up trying to recommend a Final Fantasy game to someone, anyone, it comes with a bunch of explainers and caveats. If you like this, then you might like this. If you've played this, then you might enjoy this. It's a lot. Final Fantasy XVI is the first Final Fantasy game in a long time where I don't feel any explanation is necessary. This is a good game. An RPG to get lost in, huge, gorgeous spectacles to marvel at, characters to fall in love with, and some of the best writing and performances the series has ever had. So, let's get into it with my Final Fantasy XVI review, which, given that I won't want to spoil any of the story or surprises coming your way, will be spoiler-free, with gameplay taken from the first few hours of the game. Enjoy.
This way. Bloody wind. Well, come on then.
So, Final Fantasy XVI, I think, succeeds where other more recent Final Fantasies have fallen flat, because rather than presenting us with a huge epic in a magical yet wholly unrelatable world and then matching us up with uncomplicated character archetypes that talk in very sweeping statements about needing to save that world, well, just because, Final Fantasy XVI is very much a character-driven story, one where the game takes its time to not only let us become acquainted with these complex, flawed, and well-rounded characters, but going to great lengths to paint a picture of the world they live in before it all starts going to shit and before a lot of the fantasy starts taking center stage. It's clear from the very beginning that the game takes a lot of its cues from Game of Thrones. And that's not just through the ramped up violence, swearing, and sex. Prepare to see a lot more tastefully obscured nudity than you'd expect, by the way. It's the way the story uses politics and general human messiness as a stage on which to set its more extraordinary elements. You care about protagonist Clive Rossfield not because he has big plans to save the world, he doesn't for a long time, but because he has a pretty rough time by the conclusion of the game's prologue. With many miles left to travel too, because this story is huge. Just as well, the writing for the most part is rock solid. Not just for the main quest, but to the dozens of hours worth of side missions you'll be undertaking too. While these, in their sheer number, can often feel like rather dull busy work, and they can interrupt the flow of the main story if, like me, you can't help but complete them, there are absolute gems hidden in their midst, particularly as you approach the endgame. Many are hours and multiple quests in the making, and their payoff is worth seeing through to the end. One definitely made me cry. They help you get to know the people and places of the world, and flesh out the main personalities accompanying Clive on his quest. There are some fantastic performances here too. We won't name any, again for fear of spoilers, but you form quite the merry band as you journey through the world. There are times I laughed at someone's name or raised an eyebrow when they wandered into the middle of the story unannounced, but by the end of the game, I was genuinely quite attached to all of them. The cast are on top form. The female characters are given a lot less to do in the script overall, but they still manage to make each role memorable. Sometimes, outside of the main quest, the cutscenes can lack a bit of style, a few too many fade-outs and pan-downs and identical setups, coupled with some bad lip-syncing. But the writing and performances always carry it through. From the small character moments to the grand overarching epic where our misfits finally make a stand and save the world. It is a big shame that the development team didn't see fit to make that world of Valisthea more diverse when it came to including people of colour, especially since it borrows from plenty of cultures in designing the wider world. That world, though, is as gorgeous as it is huge, with a map that spans entire nations, towns, villages, wide plains and forests, deserts and mountains, and of course, huge towering mother crystals that pierce the sky and remind you that Yes, this is a Final Fantasy game.
I'm not much
Where Final Fantasy XVI falters slightly is in its RPG framework, which often feels like something it was decided the game should have and not what it needed. Features like crafting feel wholly superfluous. Crafting materials and of course the series staple currency gil form the bulk of what you're offered in terms of rewards. Yet the most powerful and useful weapons and gear are forged as part of certain quests, leaving all other crafting and reinforcing outside of those few quests completely pointless. As I entered endgame, I had thousands upon thousands of unused materials in my inventory, and over 300,000 unspent gil. It just felt like the game didn't know what to do with those features, but it felt it needed to include them to be called an RPG. But coupled with the repetitive nature of a lot of the side quests, go here, talk to this person, kill this thing, and then receive a reward you won't use, you begin to wonder, why bother? In part also due to the fact that only your sword is visibly different when equipped. Other features are more successful, such as the hunt board, where you'll find particularly dangerous marks to bring down out in the wild. This is where you'll find most of the resources necessary for crafting the few bits and bobs you'll actually want. But more than that, it's framed as an actual hunt. Whereas other quests give you a marker, hunts will only give you a general location and sometimes not even that, and let you figure the rest out. Again though, with many elements in the game, you end up drowning a little in the sheer number there are to do, so make sure and pace accordingly. But so many optional asides boil down to go here and kill that thing, it is just as well the combat is still enjoyable even after 40 to 50 hours in. This isn't the strategic turn-based Final Fantasy combat of old, to be sure, but it knows how to hold your attention. You start off simple enough, with melee attacks and weak magic spells punctuated by the real heavy-hitting magical abilities. On its own, this cycle starts to feel repetitive, but the game really starts to get interesting once you start to rack up different iconic skills. Icons being the huge, powerful elemental creatures of this world, each housed inside the body of one individual, known as a dominant. Once you have multiple icons to draw abilities from, combat gets a lot more tactical than hitting something while waiting for your cooldowns to tick over. Each icon has more abilities than you can have equipped, and eventually, you'll have more icons than you can equip too. So finding the right parts to work with your playstyle is a bit of an adventure. There aren't that many abilities though, and we do wish the icons were more evenly paced. It takes tens of hours to get your first 3, and then it feels like a race to the end with all of the others. But of course, regular combat is also supplemented by icon battles, which form the real set pieces of the game. No spoilers here of course, but as anyone who has played the demo knows, the game starts with an icon battle between Ifrit and Phoenix, and honestly, it just gets bigger and bigger from there. These battles can be long, but luckily they're few and far enough between that they always shine bright, and there is an effort made that they each provide variation and challenge depending on what you're facing. In truth, there's not too much challenge to the combat overall. If you mix up your abilities, make ample use of the dodge button and keep potions stocked up, which shouldn't be difficult, there isn't much else to spend your money on, you'll seldom see the game over screen, which is totally fine, as the story is what the majority of people will be present for. But it is a slight shame that for players seeking a challenge, a higher difficulty mode is locked behind New Game Plus. So look, if it feels like I'm focusing on the negatives a bit too much here, that's mostly because I can't really talk about the many positives without a spoiler risk. And also because I feel like this Final Fantasy has the best chance any Final Fantasy game has had in a long time to appeal to players outside of its usual fanbase. And I think that it's good to make sure that those potential players are informed of what Final Fantasies are and what they aren't. Mind you, I did say that I could recommend this without any explainers or caveats, didn't I? And look, I can, but let's be real here. If you're this far into a video review, you probably wanted a little more detail. I just wish I could tell you about all of the little moments that I absolutely loved. Laugh out loud exchanges, raw heart-to-hearts, a series first for representation, Torgal the absolute best boy ever, breathtaking battles. A grand tale that scales to the heavens and back, yet never loses sight of the humanity at its core. And not only explores that humanity through its cast of core characters, but goes to great lengths to show that humanity through side characters you never think you'll see again, yet are allowed to grow and complicate and flourish. It's been a long while since I was able to lose myself in a good Final Fantasy story, one that tries to capture not only the fantastical, but the beautiful and ugly and intricate quirks of the world that we live in. And that's why, ultimately, I don't think recommending this one needs caveats. Because by the end of its prologue, this one has set the scene, shown its hand, and, if it has effectively drawn you in, as Square was clearly hoping it would by releasing its very generous demo, then there's no further explanation needed. This Final Fantasy is for you. As a series, Final Fantasy has lasted as long as it has because of its phoenix-like ability to reinvent itself, constantly rolling with the times and changing as its audience does. Sometimes to great effect, other times less so. It just so happens that Final Fantasy XVI burns brighter than most. I'll have a lot more Final Fantasy XVI content coming up on the channel very soon, including tips and a Let's Play, so make sure and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching. Bye!